So hi again. The last time you saw me was at Miss Nicole, right? So there was a term I suggested to you from the Lillooet people around learning. Can anybody remember any of those terms or one of those terms?
I probably will not pronounce it right, but Quilip.
That's the one I was after, yeah, Quilip. Because I know from talking to Dr. Sanford that you also are engaging in some, you call disequilibrium, or is that right?
Yeah.
Right? And Quilip is something that is hopefully causing you to reform as a teacher that isn't in the same thinking you had about a year ago when you first thought you were going to come in to become a teacher. Because when you first started the journey, you were a student who'd seen teachers. Maybe you'd done some coaching or being a teaching role, but not in an institutional teaching role. I've just sharing a story with Marita, because Marita was in my class last year, where she went through a little bit of a shocking experience that came out really good in the end, teaching creative dance to grade 3s, that wasn't working, and then suddenly came together. But in preparation for becoming a teacher, she realized it was a transformation in a way in which she was approaching how she taught those kids. Sarah and Marita both went to New Zealand to do their practicum. They have an interesting experience of what it's like teaching in a New Zealand school, in contrast to what we do in BC. I came from UK, I taught in UK. I have an interesting contrast in UK's curriculum in the last 2 decades, which has sort of, to my mind, gone backwards to going forwards. And I've just worked in Singapore for 5 weeks teaching in a high school in Singapore, which is also a very interesting experience, all of which are shifting me as a teacher continuously, and my understanding of what it looks like. The key thing, and the key thing why I'm going to get to here with digital portfolios, is Folioz is just an iteration of a system for doing digital portfolios, but the reason why we need to look at digital assessment, of which portfolios becomes a natural emergent phenomenon, why we need to look at that. So the question at the end, I want you to answer: what is the value of digital assessments and digital portfolios in education? Yeah? Turn to your partner. Answer that question right now. Go. Think, pair, share. Any quick thoughts on answering this question? Maybe you've already answered it and I don't need to show you the presentation. What's the value of digital assessment? What's your name, sorry?
I'm Samantha. If
Hi, Samantha.
it's used well, it can be really efficient.
Really, give me a sense of example of efficient.
Like maybe for like analyzing or handing in a bunch of work from students and getting the grades back, or working together and like having students work together online opposed to having to come together physically.
Very good. Yes, a collaborative work. You know, the dominant invention right now, like SARS, was going to be a terrible epidemic, but because 10,000 researchers collaborated online, they got a solution. That's how the future knowledge is going to be generated, through those types of systems. And nobody graded it. It happened because we had to do it, which is an interesting thing.
It can be used anywhere. So if you're a teacher, it's great because you don't have to have your marking bag. You can mark your students wherever you are. Just open your cell phone, your tablet, and you can do some marking.
Have you asked Kevin where he's been marking his badges?
No idea.
I know from last year when I did with these guys, I could mark it anywhere. I'll just give him a badge.
And same
Right.
for the students too. That students can upload wherever as well.
So the whole notion of feedback and checking your learning and charting your learning has become so different from 10 years ago, right? And it's always available, it's in a secure place, to actually start looking at your learning in a progressive way, which is very interesting.
I had a professor in another class point out that it's a really good parent communication tool. When you're submitting assignments online, you know, if a parent comes to parent-teacher interviews and says, "Why is my kid failing your class?" You can say, "Oh, look, let's open up their profile. Oh, look, they haven't submitted anything to me," and it's there. And it's not like the old days where kids could be like, "Oh, I did my homework, but I didn't submit it," or "I did it and my dog ate it." It's like it's all there when it's online, and it's for both you and the student and the parent to see.
And what's interesting, just in your analogy there, is suddenly my work is important for me and my learning and those who are most interested in my progress. The ongoingness to learning, rather than waiting for the end of term grade on the report card or the final test and you have a cold and you didn't do as well, right? The notion of what makes you successful isn't confined to one event. Funny enough, grading, as we now know it, was invented in the post-war period as a way of communicating to parents and to the next teacher who had the kids. It was not meant to transfer outside of the school. Only when government started getting involved in education did they grab the grade and say, we're going to use that as a measurement of, and then we're going to decide how to use that to filter people into. So the grade, as we understand now, was never meant to be used outside of the classroom, beyond the school walls. It was meant to be an internal communication system. At the time in the 50s, that's what was needed. We've still got that same system, except that grade now has become something scary to the majority of kids in school. Did you know that 1 in 3 young women, teenagers in UK, are now classified as depressed and anxiety based on testing? They are getting treated because of testing. UK is a test culture that's gone nuts. So that's the type of stats that you start to wonder, why are we doing this to people? Now, it's only 1 in 5 males, or boys, in UK, because most of the boys don't give them, right? But that's because boys have more opportunities outside of school to be successful, right? Nothing to do with the testing system. So you have to think about what it is. And so what I'm doing here is digital portfolios is way more than Folioz. This is just an example. I'm going to give you a map of some of the thinking in the last 3 or 4 years that I and several colleagues of mine have been working, and linked to actually Marita and Sarah, for you to explore. I'm not going to just present, I'm going to show you the map. So this is the map. If you go on your computer now, I don't want you to play with it yet, because I want to show you the map, then you can play. That's your address. It's http://bit.ly, then digital with a capital D and a capital P. If you type that in, it'll come up, the map. Just do that now so I know it works, because I just tested it at home. I haven't tested it in a lab with lots of people. And I've known from Marita and Sarah doing things like this, that it doesn't always work the way you think. Did it come up? Now this is interesting, this program is called CMAP. You might like it after I show you this, because it's a very cool way of bringing lots of resources into one space. And now because it embeds beautifully into Folioz, as you can see here, I'm like, oh, this is really cool because it looks so neat. So I'm going to show you how I built the map so that you know how to navigate the map. So here's the map. At the top, when you see the icon there, you can click on this particular icon, takes you to the website you've just gone to. I'm looking at 2 areas. So digital assessment for learning. So let me know what for learning means. If you're not sure, when you scan across the map, what should happen is a definition will come up. So when you get on it, you can see things like that by clicking on it. So for learning means it's something to do with an ongoing process, just like my colleague over here explained with bubble hacks. But it's that ongoing, continuous type of assessment. It's done more for an idea of how do we understand assessment in relation to social justice. Is that a common theme for you? What do I mean by social justice?
Equality for people.
Equality of opportunity, equality of access, equality of, depending on your creed, race, gender inclination. There shouldn't be something that's stopping you from learning and progressing. When we do summative assessments, and I do one on you, unfortunately I'm biased. I can't help it. So we have to be really cautious about how we understand social justice in a way of doing assessment. Then the other side of it is in relation to how we learn and relearn in the process of becoming, in your case, a teacher. But in the case of a kid in school, their ability to become a democratic citizen of society, a worthwhile democratic citizen of society. So as you go through this map, it connects. Teacher comfort with technology. Kevin told me you're not very comfortable with technology, is that correct? The key thing with comfort technology is not to be the expert. If it doesn't work, ask a kid. In Singapore, I was trying to do something with the kids where they're all filling in a Google Forms. It didn't work because the Wi-Fi went down. Within 20 seconds, 20 cell phones came up. The kids were on because I gave them points for their team, the first one to fill in the form. They were like this. It was done within 2 minutes. I didn't have to worry about the Wi-Fi not working. They could do it. 13, 14-year-olds were all over it, right? So I have to let go of being the expert, but create structures with technology and learn, because there's enough kids in the class that are going to show you neat stuff like a CMAP program that does things you've never seen before. In each of these, as you look around, there's a link. So when you go and when you look at yourself and you click on any of these, it will take you to a link that may be of interest to you. On this side, FIPPA. Who know what FIPPA is? Freedom of Information Personal Privacy Act. You need to know FIPA because anything with technology, you know you got scared, some of you get a presentation in the school where they were scaring you about technology? As long as you do FIPA, you're safe. As long as a kid has chosen to go and do things and you're helping them to navigate it and telling them, oh, you shouldn't go there, that's your job, just like in the playground. Don't climb up that high, you're going to hurt yourself. If the kid hurts himself, you've done as much as you could to stop them. Right? You can't physically constrain them. But we have to be involved in the technology because it's being used by kids outside of school all the time. They need adult guidance. That's part of your role. That's the nature of the 21st coming into the 22nd century. With FIPA, you're looking at how do you add knowledge and respecting people's privacy. We all can add knowledge to the world, and that's the notion of anything on the internet. But how do you do it in a safe and appropriate manner? And the key issues is open source applications or cloud-based software that stores your information. Now the problem with cloud-based software is, it's great, it's free. I love Google, I'm suspicious of Google. Google is as big as some nations in its GDP. The reason is every user is a commodity to Google. Every time someone uses Google, Google makes money. Very small amount of money, but makes money. How do we as teachers regulate that in an appropriate manner? But we need to use Google because it's free, easy to use, and kids are accessing it all the time. Down the bottom of Google, down here, it promotes what's called open source. Do people know what open source is? Hands up. What's open source?
Like stuff anyone can make or anyone can edit, like Wikipedia?
Lovely. Everyone can edit or make it change. And open source means the code behind the software is available to anybody to use. But no one can commercially sell it. So the idea is anyone in the world has access to it. Now Google supports open source, but the suspicion is Google tests things out and then draws it in and then adds it as a component to another piece of software. But they do support the open source community. Folioz that you use is part of the open source community. It isn't going to make money out of your usage. I pay a guy $3,200 every year to run the server to prevent it being unsecure, updating it, and basically deal with any issues. The two of us run the whole thing. We have 1,200 users right now. So it shows me it doesn't need a big user fee. You go to proprietary software, they want to charge you $60 a month to do the same type of stuff. You want to go on a Weebly, works great. But you want to do any plugins, you've got to pay a monthly fee. All the things are free and easy. That's why I like Folioz right now, because it's open source, anyone can use it. So that's the community, but if you're interested in that, come down here and explore what's going on in the open source community. Now on this side, assessment. Assessment of learning is needed. I've tried to describe it down here. But if you click on any of this side here, it will give you what the reviews have shown about high-stake tests and how this is causing a problem. That's caused your new curriculum over here to really think about how we understand learning and how we know kids are learning through the process of doing the curriculum. So your new curriculum BC has tried to respond to this issue with testing with a new way of doing the curriculum with digital assessments in mind. At the same time, knowing that a lot of teachers who are near the end of their career will not do it. Mid-career teachers are embracing it. New teachers like Kevin are doing it really well. Teachers like Marita and Sarah know how to do it. You're in that group. But you may be able to figure it out as you get into the job. It's going to change. That means on this side, you as a set of teachers are learning how to use a system to change the way in which you understand learning. Have you done some peer assessment? Using your Folioz, have you done some self-assessment? Changed your thing, got some feedback and changed it? That's the type of learning, relearning process that's been advocated by digital assessment for learning. In that you take something and it keeps growing and developing, rather than boom, under the bed, forget about it, boom, forget about it, good, can't remember that, can't find it, moving on. It's trying to say our knowledge is not in compartments, it grows and combines in a more organic way. And how do we make that happen is the goal of any type of Folioz system. So your new curriculum, you can click there if you want to click to that, is competency-based, click there if you want to understand that. And that shifts the way in which we do learning for the 21st century based on this process of looking at competency, which is like doing a driving test, my best metaphor. And that testing, this type of testing, is useful if it's allowing you access to new things, if it's moving you through, when you're ready. If I took a test for you guys right now, 2 people might be ready to take the test I gave you. The rest of you have no freaking idea. When you're ready to take a test, it's a good thing. When I play video game, when I'm ready to level up, I want to be ready to level up. I don't want to level up until I can get there. That's the notion of assessment in digital work. Personalized, and the idea is enabling a shift of instructional practice. So down the bottom here, if you're interested in looking at that, you've got examples. Here's proprietary software available in North America, not just Folioz, loads of other ones. But these are actually paid for, most of these. Digital learning portfolio that you're learning with us, and then your Folioz system here and where that's come from. And the whole notion of this is that Folioz system allows you to develop this flexible sharing as you work with different communities. And what you're going to do in this course, and give you a little insight, is you're going to end up with an interview at the end on your portfolio with principals, VPs, and teachers from local schools who are going to come in. They're going to look at where you're at. Some of these people may be possibly working with you in the future. You may be in one of their schools. Every time we do it, they are so impressed. You can listen to them here. The principals will tell you, instructors will tell you. This is the map. Because you're individuals, you can go anywhere you like in the map now. Go and explore it. Go. Okay, I'll just give your attention a second. What do you notice about this engagement I just gave you? What did you notice? You're the answer. What's your name?
Kane.
Kane, yeah?
It's individually catered, so everybody can choose what they want to do.
Brilliant, right? So, funny thing is, you do a presentation for a colleague, you go, oh, I'll go over it. I started thinking, what presentation should I do? And I think, there's so many things I'd like to tell you guys, I can't possibly put it in a presentation. I'll put everything in one place, and then see what you find. See where you go. What's fascinating for me going around is hardly anybody is in the same place. Everybody's looking at different things. Now, I'm a complexitist researcher, which means I like to take systems, self-organize them to learn, so the system learns of each other. My goal here is that if you know something and he knows something different and you share it, 2 people know something different now, right? So remember that other concept, Indigenous one, put learning your peers before your own? The more you do and share the learning you're getting with other people, you as a system is learning. And because some of you have found something in my portfolio that's interesting, and then it comes up later on, it's called network theory, it's called a weak tie, you're going to remember it. Oh, there's a thing there, I remember that. And you're going to find it and apply it straight away and tell everybody else, and go, oh, that's a brilliant idea. And it starts to work. Imagine your high school class of kids just like that. That's what it looks like when I go into Brad's class at Reynolds. When they get going, that's exactly what it feels. There's a problem. A kid has an idea, the rest of them go, oh, let's just try that. And the group is diverse in its ability to solve problems. That's the intelligence of any system. When Google does its purposeful play hours, it's to get people doing diverse things because they know they bring in something new to solve problems. That's the curriculum of the future. How to do that, I believe, digital assessment is a critical part of it. Because exactly the things you said at the beginning, it's allowing a free movement of knowledge and movement to people quickly to apply to issues that they see as important. But you need to make the curriculum important. So when you're doing social studies, you've got to be an activist in your community for social studies to be a real social studies, not just studying dates. Historical events are important when they're significant in relation to things happening now. And when we go back to those dates, we understand the root cause of problems. Then history becomes embedded in our culture, not within a date for a test. Is that good? All right. We're going to break now, because Sarah and Marita are very nervous. I want you to have a little engagement with their portfolio, and then you can come back to this, and we'll answer any questions that you have that may have arisen of things you're looking at. Is that good? Anything that's come up right now before I move on to just allow you to look into a personal portfolio of 2 new professionals who are going to be great teachers, I know, but they're already forming their identity. They're a year ahead of you. Any questions?
Hi. I don't really know where to start, but I guess I'll go through. This is my Folioz page. Basically, what was the first question again? I'm already. Our class last year had Tim for tech and for PE, so we kind of got to integrate the 2 together, which I found very helpful.
Purpose.
What?
Purpose.
Purpose, yes. So, I guess where to start with this? I've never really had an experience with a portfolio in school myself, so this was kind of new for me, and then also I'm not techie at all. So like, I don't know if any of you guys, they were saying that you're not very comfortable with technology. I'm like awful. I didn't even have a computer until like 2 years ago. So it was like, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. But that was one of the things that I was kind of worried about going into a classroom, especially now, because all the kids know everything. And it's just like, yes, I know how to use YouTube, but how do I attach the projector and show things like that? So anything like fresh grade or the Folioz, it kind of seemed like it was like a little bit far away for me to be doing, because I'm definitely not an expert on it at all. But after working with it a bit and doing it yourself, you kind of become more comfortable just by doing it. And also, you see how it works as a student almost, so that you can tweak it in ways when you're teaching it that will work better for your students. And the main thing for me was that it was ongoing. And I think that a lot of assessment is very summative. And it kind of looks at the end picture, and like you said, like if you're having an off day, that is your one shot and then it's kind of gone. So this is very much like looking at your progress throughout a year, and you're constantly adding to it and kind of showing how you're developing in your thinking. And it's very low risk, but you can still get good assessment from it, because I feel like a lot of assessment that happens is you're giving grades and kind of saying like you're not good at this, and kind of there's a lot of risk to trying out your learning. Whereas this, I could kind of like put something on and try it out and then like reflect on it in the same space and add another thing. And so like if the format was very practical for that, to see what I was thinking and what I was learning, and present that all in a way that they can see that I'm actually thinking about the topics. And someone mentioned it, like it's good for connecting with parents, and just also I feel like for teachers in the next year, so that you can kind of go back and see your students' work from the year before and see where they're at and where they're starting from, to kind of help you gauge where you need to start from. So I guess just the ongoingness of it, I don't know how else to put it, but that it's there and it's constantly building and growing, and as you learn more and change your mind maybe, or discover new things, you can add that on there, and you can kind of see that growth throughout by going through different pages.
So one of the things that's interesting was Marita logs in. The one you see there is her public one, right? So anyone in the world can see it. But she did a lot of work with kids in school, so then you have to have that in a different set of access. So if I was logged into my portfolio, I could see her portfolio if she shared it with me. And the critical thing with Folioz is a very powerful set of sharing tools. So you can decide to share to just one person, to share to a group, to share for just a week. So it's not like a link that can float around. So it allows you to send things out, and then it will expire after 2 days. So it's a way of showing information that could be seen as private, but as long as another teacher's seeing it, then it's allowed, then you can actually share it. And all the stuff I've done with Marita and Sarah, the school would sign their release saying to parents saying, yes, we allow pictures of our kids to be seen by other certified teachers. Right? That would mean you've done a police check. So you have different type of communities in which you can then share, which I found really powerful.
We had to do pages for our class, so we also did extension assignments. So this is one of the ones where I took a teaching experience that we did in class, and instead of writing a long paper on it, I did it on Folioz, so that it's kind of a little bit more interesting to look at. I can put in pictures and videos, and kind of have the lesson plan, what we were thinking, and it's all on the one page. And then I made it into a collection, so so that I can have different pages that focus on reflecting on different things, and they're linked to YouTube videos that are unlisted, so you can only get to it with a certain link, and it's not out there for everyone to see. And then so then you can kind of, this probably would have translated into a very, very long paper, but when it's kind of put in this format, I feel like it's a better representation of what I learned, and it's a little easier to look at, and then you can kind of, like I had some blogs and reflections on that. So like there is a lot of writing still, but the way that it's formatted is a little bit easier to take in. And I think that having the ability to put in videos especially, because I was looking at my own teaching and my bad habits and things I needed to work on, and it's like crazy how much you see once you watch yourself on camera. And so that was kind of like, I could show that I looked at this video and I reflected on it, and then like this is how my lesson was supposed to go with the original lesson plan, this is how it went, kind of thing. So I found it very useful in that regard.
Any other questions for Marita? Just as
Please
you're
ask questions. I'm kind of just talking right now.
So for the design itself, did you eventually do a custom design in the
Yeah,
videos?
I always did a custom design basically for the blocks, because that was part of it for me, is that I wanted it to be easy to look at, and that's another thing that I like about this, is that you can really have a lot of freedom with how you move things around. So you can go into the page, so if I wanted to edit this page and do the layout, you can create your own, which I did a lot of, because it was basically every page I had a different way that I wanted to present it, and I wanted this picture to be a bit bigger and just have a little text there, and so you can play around with that and like go down to the bottom. Yeah, see, I've made some pretty weird ones, but you can make your own, which is really helpful, which is something like Weebly, I guess, and when they have a very set theme and format, it kind of constricts you, so this is very free in that regard. And then you can kind of see how it looks. So yeah, I definitely played around with the layout a lot. And like you can see the, I go back to this. You can change the theme, and like have they talked about skins and things with you too? Because you can make your own, which I did for that because it's like a gym floor connected. But you can also change the theme, which changes what the little headers look like. So I could do that one. I don't know if it'll show you right away. Yeah, it's gray and boring, but I like the other one because elementary education, so it's fun. But yeah, so you can definitely play around with those things, and I would highly recommend doing that because you can make your page a little bit more interesting to look at. And yeah, any other questions? Yeah, because I actually did use it for other classes too. Go back to that and show you. Because in my art class we had to do a sketchbook, but I knew that I was doing my practicum overseas, so I didn't want to have to carry a large sketchbook of all my things. So I took pictures of everything, and it is 13 pages long, but like it has all sorts of the artwork, and we went through like the principles of design. So it's like, I'll show you the texture page. So each page is a different principle of design with the example activities we did, and what I was like, my reflections on them, and some other resources, and all sorts of things like that. And it was, but it worked really, really well to show it.
So you have
in
to
a way
instruct
that,
her. You know, I hadn't seen that until because the wife came after. But just imagine if I was teaching Marita now, and before I taught her, I could just flip through her portfolio, right, and see what she's done in other classes. How much better am I going to be as an instructor for you now? Right, if I know some of the things you've already done, and if I'm starting to imagine the assignments that are going to really build on the skills you already have, or put you in groups of people with different skills because I've seen that you've got, suddenly my pedagogy is not about me at the front, it's me creating learning structures in class that I know people are going to teach other people. Have you done anything, zones of proximal development with Vygotsky inside? That's exactly how you would then organize your class, and suddenly independent learning is happening, but it's not, it's actually structured independent learning because you've made the structures work, knowing stuff about your students.
Yeah, and that's like one of the biggest things too, is like making that relationship with your students, and you can always do like the little quiz at the beginning of the semester or whatever, but I feel like that only gets to a certain level. So if you have something like this that's carrying over from grade to grade, you're seeing their educational journey from a long ways back, and I don't think that happens often. And I think that there's not also enough communication between teachers, between elementary school and high school, because really it's from kindergarten to grade 12, we should be communicating with each other. And that really doesn't happen. So this would be a way that you can kind of see all the way back to years and years ago and kind of see as they progressed, and it's all there and it's saved there and it's not gonna get stuffed away in some cupboard and forgotten kind of thing. So like it's all still there.
Are schools starting this, like in the elementary schools for the kids?
With first grade, yeah.
Yeah, fresh grade is one. I'm not super familiar with it. In New Zealand they had this thing called Kid Blog. I don't know if it's probably not just in New Zealand, but it was kind of a similar idea to like a Google Drive type, Google Classroom type thing, where they could upload their work, and it was like a classroom thing, not a personal one. And a lot of elementary schools you'll see like not a digital portfolio, but a paper one, and it's kind of the thing that you pull out at like parent-teacher interviews, and like they take it home at the end of the year. So people have been doing it for a while, but now we're finding a way to transition it to being digital and kind of a little more permanent perhaps, and yeah, I guess.
And part of it is infrastructure, right? Because only last year Google Classroom became
I will go through, show you what I included on mine from first year. Feel free to ask questions at any point. I have some questions to kind of guide things, but this is more for you guys than it is for me. So if you have things you're wondering or things that are unclear, just shout at me. So first year, or like first time we did this, have you guys done intro videos? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did that, and we won't watch it because it's kind of embarrassing. But I challenged myself to do kind of like stop motion to try and learn a different thing, because I'd done simple videos before. So that was kind of a fun start to the year, because it was a new format that I could see my students using, but I hadn't used myself. So I wanted to figure out how to do that. So I basically just drew, took tons of pictures, and then just formatted them all over each other to make it into a video. It was the first time that I realized how much time and patience it takes to learn these new tech skills, and how much playing it takes. So it really encouraged me to be flexible with myself when I'm learning these new technologies, because it takes a lot of fiddling around, and just playing is the best way that I can learn them. So that's kind of what I did. On my main page, I have all my major portfolios. So the one thing I did that was different from some others in my cohort was extension assignments. Have you guys come across extension assignments in other courses and things? A little bit. So Tim was really good. He was also our PE teacher, so he gave us an opportunity to select assignments to do beyond our regular coursework that were in interest areas specific to us. So I was very interested in supporting students with learning exceptionalities, so that is where I focused my attention, I guess. So then Folioz, because we were learning PE and tech both from Tim, Folioz became kind of my platform to research in that capacity, and it kind of took off and became a huge research project for me. I won't go through everything because it's quite long, but I basically researched 3 different learning exceptionalities that are common, gathered resources, and then I did pages for each of them. But one of the best things I was able to do with this project was interview a learning support teacher at Braefoot Elementary. So I recorded that interview and took what I could from it. Gathered all my collection here and whatnot. But the benefit of having it all on here now is that when I go back and look at it, I often realize that I learned a lot more than I could necessarily say from just reflecting. So if I was to tell you what I learned from that project off the top of my head, it probably would be pretty limited, because you only have so much working memory at one time. But when I reflect back on this, it's a very tangible way for me to see everything that I did and the ways that I expanded further in that. So I would encourage you guys to take your Folioz outside of tech class and push it a little bit further. So try and do an extension assignment on it, try and do something you wouldn't normally think to do on it, whether that's just making a collection of resources for a specific subject area that you're going to be working with. Something like that, I'd encourage you to do that, because the more you push yourself to do something you're uncomfortable with on the platform, the more you get to be confident with it. I guess a question for all of you, do you have a sense of how you might see yourself using a digital portfolio with your students? Have you thought about that? And had ideas? Does anybody have ideas they want to share?
Yeah, well, in our cross-curricular class,
Yeah.
we have to find an assignment that relates for ours to social studies, music, and chemistry.
Okay.
So trying to find an activity that can bridge all those together. We wanted to kind of look at personal identity, and so in that way we were going to make a digital, a Folioz page or something similar, so that way they can reflect on who am I culturally, how does the music of my people, who are my people and how does that influence me, and then more of a science, who am I, why do I have blue eyes, why do I have blonde hair,
Cool.
and put that all, you have different pages for each subject, but it's still same idea,
Same
but it's hard to,
theme.
hard to find something for music, chemistry, social studies, so this is a good way to put them together.
Cool. One of the biggest challenges is being comfortable with it yourself before you introduce it to your students. But like Tim was saying, I think a lot of teachers from those we spoke to while we were doing tech, because we had an opportunity to go into classrooms and help them with a tech initiative and what that would look like for them, and we realized how much of a gap there is between some teachers. A lot of teachers have never used their projector before. So it goes from that range to teachers who are doing almost everything online. So for us, the big challenge was just becoming confident enough that you feel like you can bring it in, but also not feeling like you need to be an expert on a certain technology before you introduce it to your class, because every student's gonna get it in a different way and every student's gonna use it differently. You have to think about your students and your learners and what that's going to look like for them, that it's actually still going to be meaningful. In my opinion, if a student isn't part of making a portfolio for themselves, then it's not really any different than writing a report card. So bringing kids into the process of actually recording their own learning and having the flexibility to put things that they're proud of into a portfolio and constantly be updating that and adapting that and getting feedback and making it a formative process is what makes a portfolio actually an effective tool for assessment and for a student to show what they have learned. My portfolio has become something that I'm very proud of because I can look back on it, and I started using it for other subjects too, so it has almost all of my major learning from all of my courses last year on it. Personally, building my own portfolio, I found it was a lot more effective if I was on it on a continuous basis and adding to it as I went, as opposed to letting it build up and then become this overwhelming, I need to have this much stuff on it. So if I was adding to it as I went, or for other classes I was doing blogs and things, which again was on a more continual basis, it became a much less overwhelming process. And then at the end of the year when we did interviews and things like that, it was very quick for me to go back on and refresh my memory of all the things I had learned. I could see it physically, I could show somebody I've done this and this, and I learned this from it. So if you were to use these technologies with your students, I would highly recommend making it a regular part of your routine, so students get in the pattern of just every Tuesday and Friday we go on for 20 minutes and update, as opposed to leaving it till like you need to have 20 things in your portfolio by the end of the week, because then it doesn't really transition away from it still being a summative assessment. So it's really important that you're staying on top of it, is what I found for myself, and also using it student-based.
For me, modeling to you different forms of assessment, this is my form of assessment of you and your growing knowledge. So when we have checkpoint 1, 2, and 3, it's not that I check in checkpoint 1 and you receive feedback and that's it. Checkpoint 1 informs where you're moving forward towards 2, and it allows you to keep building your experiences. It's technology related and multiliteracy and so on, but it continuously is showing us how you're evolving, so you can give those opportunities for your students too to continuously show how they're evolving.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing I found with Folioz was that there's things that I started at the beginning of the semester that by the end of the semester I wasn't really happy with it, but because it's on such a fluid format, I could still go back in and access and re-edit those, so it wasn't like I had submitted it and it was done and I didn't have another chance. I could go back in and make edits to things I had originally put on there, and it was still a record of my understanding, but it was a more reflective representation of what I knew by the end of the term, as opposed to just what I knew at the start versus the end.
What did you enjoy the most? Which part of portfolio developing?
Personally, I'm very artistic, so I really liked just tinkering and like playing with layout and personalization stuff with it. So it was kind of fun that I could, like, once I've got the basic information down, I had a little bit of flexibility to make it presented in the way that I wanted it. So
Can we see what your teaching artifacts are, just to get a better understanding of what?
do you guys do teaching artifacts? Alright, so mine started with kind of a basic overview of who I am, why I want to teach, what my passions are, photos, things like that. And then again, I tried to relate everything back to, like, why is this relevant to me as a teacher? So if somebody was to go on my portfolio, it's not just another Facebook page. So that was one of the biggest things, like, all of them will have, how is this relevant to teaching, or try to find all that. So I usually have reflections after things, and then connections to standards of teaching, or why this is relevant, why this is important, how this helped me learn as an educator. And it does shift your thinking from not just like, why am I doing this as a student, like I'm doing this to pass, to like, how is this actually helping me be a better teacher? And that shift of thinking was very effective for me in this format, but however you need to reflect to make that happen, if it's blogs or whatever works for you. This is our technology initiative. It's a reflection on that. Do you guys do technology initiatives? This was a really fun lesson for us. We went into a grade 1 class. Our teacher was pretty not opposed to using technology, but really not comfortable using technology of any kind. So we created iMovie trailers. She was focusing on the parts of the story, beginning, middle, end, and characters. So we gave students various fairy tales, and then they came in costumes. We had some parent volunteers come, and basically they filmed just the teeny tiny little clips that you need to make an iMovie trailer, and it put it all together for them. So that was really cool because we made them and watched them all in one day, and it was a cool way for the students to see like, this is what you can do in 1 hour of time, something that they previously didn't think was possible. Yeah, exit interviews were actually really cool. They seem kind of scary, but they're really not. It's very cool to be able to actually show off what you've done and everything you've learned, and it's kind of a nice closure to everything you do. So we basically sat down with a professional from the community, and they asked us questions, and we walked through answering them, but we had our Folioz there kind of as a support. So it didn't become like just sending off a link, and it didn't become just having an interview. It was kind of like an assisted interview, so you could be like, oh, okay, I want to talk about this, but then you kind of had a support and something to fall back on in your Folioz. So it didn't seem so overwhelming because you knew that you had some things that you could actually show. And for your students, it's a great way to do an interview alongside a portfolio, because they don't feel like they're coming at it with like just what's in their head. There's a little bit more that they can tangibly show you, like, oh yeah, I remember learning about this, and here's my demonstration of what I learned about this. So it was an interesting opportunity to reflect on what we had learned, but also see how you could actually use that with a student. I would envision using these in parent-teacher interviews and things like that, where you can sit down with your student and be like, show me your 3 favorite things in this subject area that we've done this far, and explain something about them. It gives them a little bit more flexibility to show things that they're confident in, and also is assessing them on their strengths rather than what they don't know. So that was kind of what I took away from that one.